Now to a spy thriller unfolding in the heart of suburban Los Angeles. The CIA allegedly brainwashes a woman and turns her into a sex slave to the rich and famous.
It does sound bizarre. Jody Baskerville is here there with this Unit 13 exclusive investigation.
Brice Taylor used to be your typical soccer mom, with a successful husband, 3 kids, and a beautiful home in the San Fernando Valley. That is, until she started telling of a secret double life as a mind-controlled sex slave for the CIA.
I would have sex with him and deliver whatever messages that I was programmed to deliver.
Now, this one-time suburban housewife finds herself the unlikely leading lady in a real-life psychosexual spy thriller, co-starring a former Los Angeles FBI chief.
Brice Taylor is absolutely telling the truth. I would stake my name and reputation of 50 years on it.
A UCLA professor of psychiatry.
I'm sure she has no evidence that the CIA really is doing this.
And a crusading psychologist.
It's what you read about the Holocaust and what they did in the Nazi camps.
If Brice Taylor's story sounds more like a movie than reality, well, maybe that's because it's awful close to the plot of Long Kiss Goodnight. Just like Gina Davis, Brice is knocked unconscious in a near-fatal car accident that jolts loose suppressed memories of another life as a CIA operative, seducing the rich, the famous, and the powerful from Washington to Hollywood.
All of a sudden, I'm in bed with some, politician or different Hollywood actor or comedian.
And even American presidents.
My programmed assignment was to strip, to swim with the president, and then to have sex with him later on in the evening.
Have you ever considered the possibility that you're just crazy?
I absolutely thought I was crazy initially.
But now, more than 10 years and countless psychotherapy sessions later, Brice and a band of supporters are convinced she was indeed the victim of covert CIA mind control experiments.
If Brice was the only person who I had heard those stories from, then I would say, this has surely got to be crazy.
Dr. Pamela Monday, an Austin, Texas psychologist, says she is treating 60 other women telling the exact same story as Brice.
It is the worst abuse of human beings you could possibly imagine.
Then there's Ted Gunderson, a special agent in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles division until he retired in 1979.
Mind control has been in this country since the late 1940s.
Gunderson has obtained numerous declassified documents to support his claim, including a finding by a Senate investigation that the CIA has indeed conducted mind control experiments on unwitting American citizens.
It's mind-boggling. I happen to have 2,200 plus pages of documentation of the mind control program.
Brice alleges that she and her entire family were among the victims of that program, conducted at military bases and major hospitals across the country, including Los Angeles. Brice claims that the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute here in Los Angeles was used by CIA-controlled doctors as a chamber of horrors where both she and her father were subjected to diabolical mind control and brainwashing experiments.
Drugs, hypnosis, electroshock, torture.
And Brice says it turned her into a mindless Stepford wife. A programmed sex toy who could be triggered into action by the CIA with subliminal messages embedded in her brain.
I was a human robot who had no ability to think or question on my own. I could only follow commands.
Brice, now 49, says she was just one of thousands of mind-controlled sex slaves known in the CIA as presidential models, programmed to seduce and gather intelligence from powerful men without ever remembering a thing about it.
I had no idea because I was programmed to consciously only know that I was, doing my motherly housewife duties.
Shoot, Bobby Raven.
Yes, it's strangely similar to another movie, The Manchurian Candidate. How could they do this without anyone noticing?
My husband was also programmed.
And so were their children, Brice says, including her beautiful young daughter, Kelly.
Sometimes We were even programmed to be a mother-daughter sex team.
Whether it's true or not, Brice's story has had a tragic effect on her once happy family. She and her husband are now divorced, and her 2 grown sons have virtually disowned her.
Well, my ex-husband and my sons think that I'm absolutely crazy.
Kelly was the only one who believed her mother's story and suffered a complete nervous breakdown over it.
Kelly actually made 2 suicide attempts.
And now at age 22, Kelly is in a catatonic state in a California mental hospital after being committed by a judge just last year.
My fear is that she will be harmed while she's in this institution.
Even Dr. John Hockman, an assistant professor of psychiatry at UCLA, doesn't doubt Brice is convinced what she is saying is true.
She could be a great actress and just be scamming everybody. That's possible. But my take was that she believed what she was saying.
Including Brice's claim that she was brainwashed by the CIA at Hockman's very hospital.
UCLA is the biggest hospital west of the Mississippi, so I don't know what's going on in every laboratory, every patient room, every closet, every corridor to corridor.
However, Dr. Hockman suspects Brice is not a victim of CIA mind control, but of a strange condition known as false memory syndrome, in which delusions are unwittingly reinforced and sometimes even implanted by psychotherapists themselves.
Many of the cases in recent years that have caused problems have been the result of psychotherapists. They didn't really understand the power of the techniques and the way techniques can make things go wrong.
We contacted 3 Los Angeles psychotherapists who treated Brice, but all of them refused to discuss her case even with her permission. Pam Monday believes that's because they've already been threatened by the CIA.
There is no such thing as false memory syndrome. There's nothing in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that says there is such a thing.
In fact, Dr. Monday claims the condition was actually concocted by the CIA to cover up its mind control experiments. Are you CIA?
As far as I know, I'm not CIA. Maybe they know I'm CIA, but I don't know.
Meanwhile, Brice Taylor remains convinced that her memories are tragically real.
I definitely believe this is still going on, and I believe it will continue to go on until it's exposed and stopped.
Brice Taylor wrote about her alleged life as a CIA sex slave in vivid detail in a new book out called Thanks for the Memories. Believe it or not.
True or not, I feel so sorry for the daughter.
Isn't that awful?
She seems like the victim in all this.
Yeah.
Catatonic state.
A lot of questions still.
Thanks for that. Coming up next on UPN News 13.
With the similar subject of ritual abuse, and we have with us today, the first time in Florida, she was with us in Denver last August, Brice Taylor of South Carolina, and her story I think you'll find very interesting, even if totally unthinkable, but the unthinkable has been going on. She can tell you about it from a first-hand area of expertise in a lot of ways. So welcome Brice Taylor with us here this afternoon.
Thank you, Dean. Is this on?
Are you wired?
No.
Oh, did you want to use that one or this one?
It doesn't matter.
You got to get close to it. Yeah, get close to the live mic.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Dean. I really appreciate the opportunity for being here today. And for me, today is quite a celebration in my recovery in ways that you'll be able to understand when I get a little bit further into my talk. But today is the day that I'm going to overcome my fear of naming the names of my affluent and oftentimes publicly known famous people that were part of my abuse system. The reason I'm doing that is in order to stand and speak for others other survivors who have not yet had the chance of recovering to the level that I've been so fortunate to be supported to recover to. And so today when I speak the names, I'm speaking the names for all of us, for all of this, so that we can begin to have this system exposed and stopped, so that these crimes that are occurring against children all over the world can come to an end. I would like to also thank Ted Gunderson, who has been my personal support and security system for a lot of years. In 1985, when I first had my accident and started waking up to the reality of what I had been involved with, Ted started coming forward and advising me with ways to stay safe and to stay alive, and his technique worked, so thank you. And I'd also like to thank my children who are still under mind control and are still as yet under control with their perpetrators. I would like to thank them for being born into my life so that I would have a reason to continue living against all odds and against the horror that I woke up to, that I didn't believe that I would be able to live through. And if it wasn't for my children, I probably would not have had the motivation or the courage to continue the battle that I had to face. It's really frustrating for me as I stand before you to try to figure out how I could say something that is so important and is so important for so many people's lives, for me to be able to get it all organized and to say it in a way that you could understand. It has been a real challenge for me, and so I hope that you'll just be patient and open your minds and your hearts to the possibility that there are children all over the world who have been abused in the similar ways that I'm going to share with you my experience today, so that we can begin as a nation to put an end to what has been covered up for so many, many years. As Ted explained about the ritual abuse, I also am an intergenerational satanic ritual abuse and government mind control survivor. And satanic ritual was a way that my controllers were able to control me, as using the satanic blood ritual as a trauma base. It's a conditioning in order to bring about the mind control, the levels of mind control and the multiple personality disorder that was the result of being tortured for so many different years and since I was a very small child. In order to stay alive, once I started remembering, I wrote a book, and my book is back on the table, but I'd like to explain that it was novelized not in an effort to cover up the story further, but it was novelized in an attempt to keep me alive. At that time, it was very dangerous, and I found myself often running from state to state and from people to people, trying to find a safe place to recover and to figure out what had happened. And I guess the easiest way to begin my story is to begin when I began waking up. In 1985, I had a head-on collision where my head smashed through the windshield of the car, and for the first time in my life, I had access to both sides of my brain. And there really wasn't anyone in 1985 that really understood much about ritual abuse or the memories that I started having, and so I entered school to work on my master's degree in clinical psychology, thinking that I might be able to understand what was going on with my own mind. But when my memories and flashbacks became so intrusive that I could no longer think without being constantly bombarded by visual and sensory images, much like the Vietnam veterans, I quit school and went into therapy full-time. I was in therapy every day for about 6 years on a daily basis, where I started documenting the horror of the rituals that I attended as a child was taken to, and of all the child abuse that led to my further sophisticated programming, and then on into the government mind control, where I was used in the intelligence community with the elite families and with people such as my owner, who was Bob Hope. I did it. And thank you. And Henry Kissinger, who was responsible for programming me with what he called government mind files, where I was used as a human computer, and he took me with him to different places to do foreign policy and meetings, where he would access my mind behind the scenes in order to work with the people that he was working with the Rockefellers and some of the other people that I was involved with in bringing in the New World Order. The agenda that Henry Kissinger was the mastermind of is very, very sophisticated and involves a lot of people. It involves presidents, it involves governors, it involves foreign leaders. And in my experience, and because Henry decided that for whatever reason I was the one selected to be used as this human tape recorder that he sent around the world in order to target certain individuals that they wanted to own or control or use and manipulate through sexual encounter, and then by either passing messages to these people or retrieving messages. He also used me to send messages back and forth between George Bush and a lot of other different world leaders who were very instrumental and still are in bringing out the New World Order. Back to my therapy and all of that, as I began coming up with these memories and talking about it in my therapy with my therapist, and they just kept looking at me like I was crazy because they didn't understand what all this ritual abuse was and why I was talking about being flown at night in helicopters where there were no lights on, and where I was flown into tops of buildings in Beverly Hills and in Las Vegas and in Hollywood and all over, and they didn't understand. But my one therapist finally realized that there was something to what I was saying when she looked out the window and there were men in suits in the car waiting at my therapy session. She lived in a residential neighborhood, so it was a little out of order for that to be happening. So I realized then, and she did too, that I was in danger. And given all the names that I was remembering, she said, I think we need to get you out of town and into hiding for a while. So I left my home, my husband, my children, and everything that I had ever known, and went to an island where she found me a safe place to live. That's a whole other story in itself. But while I was on the island, I realized, because I wasn't around the people that I was programmed to in my family, I realized that I had been used as a sex slave with Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon and all of these different presidents, and I didn't understand. I thought, as my programming dictated, I thought that I was absolutely crazy. There was no way this happened. You know, I'm just this housewife, and this is absolutely crazy. So as my programming dictated, I had migraine headaches when I began to remember. I had suicidal feelings. I wanted to cut and burn myself. I had to fight a lot of the programming that was there and very carefully set into place that guaranteed national security that I would never be able to remember and tell. But through what I call is my divine intervention and my spiritual connection, I was led all over the place to people and places that would help me so that I would recover in order to stand before you and to report what it was that I saw and what I heard and what I know. And what I do know is that children are being used as huge financial resources and tortured and abused in horrendous ways in order to fund a lot of the covert operations that I believe and know now are the mind control operations and a lot of the other government products and projects that have been kept still in classified documentation. The children that were abused in many ways, like I was, and I feel like Joan Benet Ramsey was one such little child who may have had a very similar history, were, if I would explain to you that from the time I was born, that my father and others tortured me over and over with sexual abuse, satanic ritual abuse, near drowning and suffocations, terror harassments where I was absolutely terrified about things that I was told when I was in a drug state were going to happen to myself and my family. Electroshock, in the earlier years when I was a child, they used cattle prods, and as I grew older, they used stun guns on me. Food and sleep deprivation, and then as I grew older, and evidently I was able to, for whatever reason, master the levels of abuse that I had gone through, and was able to do what they wanted to. I was taken to military bases, I was taken to Disneyland, and I was taken to NASA, and I was put into a lot of the equipment that they use on astronauts and that they have there that's very sophisticated brainwave mind control programming technology that is in use, that also uses drugs, bright light, sound, and electrodes, and all kinds of very, very sophisticated frequency medicine. I was taken to Edwards Air Force Base. I was taken to Point Mugu Naval Weapons Center, 29 Palms in California, and a lot of different military installations around the country. Henry Kissinger took me into different agencies in D.C. and asked me to use my photographic memory, which he had programmed in, to document documents that he wanted to have in my mind so that if he ever needed to pull up information, he could do that. And I was also used as an information gather between a lot of the members of this elite, the global elitists that feel that, and I listened in between Kissinger and Rockefeller's, they talked about the fact that 98% of the world population really doesn't think and doesn't deserve to be alive, and that they aren't genetically elite like they are and their progeny, and they really wanted to reduce the population of the planet so that it would be left in a more pristine way for their progeny. Adolf Hitler and George Bush both talked about the New World Order. And from what I now understand, the concentration camps in Nazi Germany were actually used for mind control experimentation. And Mark Phillips, who was a person that I knew several years ago, actually shared with me, and it's documented in Linda Hunt's book, Project Paperclip, that Mark Phillips actually was instrumental and was a witness in flying these Nazi doctors to our country and installing them into the major universities. They were given political immunity as they continued to do the experimentation on the mind. And a lot of survivors that I talk with from all over the world and that write me letters are naming all of these different people and are naming the different places that they were taken into, hospitals, universities, military bases, in order to further their programming. The other thing I would like, that I think is really, really important to explain, is that people that have been satanically, ritualistically abused are controlled and are actually the plan of control was to manipulate people through, not only through the trauma which causes the multiple personality and dissociation, but also the guilt. And I don't know that I could really explain to you, but I think that those of you that are parents might understand the absolute terror and horror of waking up, as I did, to realize that not only had my parents done this horrific abuse to me, but that I had also passed this down to my children in a programmed state that I was totally and completely unaware of. And I think that anyone that ever says that they've been programmed or ritually abused and says that they did not abuse their own children or pass this down are really not truly survivors of this abuse, because that is the way that they keep people totally and completely under control. My children are now, my oldest son is 21 and my daughter is 19, and my youngest son is 15, and as I said, they're still totally under control. My daughter also was used and was programmed from birth, actually. She was taken out of my arms in the hospital, and an intelligence officer stuffed a wadded tissue down her throat and brought her near death immediately after her birth in order to dissociate her and to dissociate me and terrify me to not tell. Kelly is now in basically a group home, and she is totally and completely a mess. And I believe that there are children all over the world who are suffering from this and are stuffed away in mental hospitals or prisons or whatever and not believed. And so in this way, the plan continues to proliferate, and these children end up not getting the help that they deserve because of the media cover-up, because this is all such a large political agenda with such, as you can see, it's got wide backing. It's got a lot of years of loyalty to it, and a lot of people and a lot of technology. But I believe that they were short-sighted as far as not understanding that even their technology that was guaranteed that I could never remember by national security agenda was that they were very short-sighted in their own spirituality, to know that my innate spirituality would be what would lead me out of this and into the truth of what happened. And so that's where I believe that as we're all able to connect more spiritually, to be discerning, and to not just take what people say or what you read in the newspaper, giving you the propaganda lies that they want you to believe, but there is a way out of it, and that's by learning to critically analyze, think on our own, and trust ourselves to know that we know the truth.
In 1985, I embarked on the long and tedious, painful road to recovery. Through years of therapy and deprogramming, I completely reintegrated my multiple personalities back into my uniform core self, and through the grace of God, I am alive today to convey to you my true life experiences. Mind control sex slaves are created by starting with a child from birth and inducing trauma, which for me was done in the form of being sexually abused and then being satanically abused within a church, and then also at home, where I was put through a trial of satanic rituals, which means there were blood rituals done where I was forced to witness animals and people being sacrificed. And then things such as in the church, I was sexually abused by the minister there. And a lot of it was a cover for pornography and then child prostitution that looked like I was going to choir practice, but once the doors were closed to the area where we did that. We were taken down the basement, and it turned into kiddie porn where we were being filmed.
I was an FBI agent for 27.5 years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I'd have to say that Brice Taylor's story has been confirmed over and over again through my various sources. I also have contacts on the inside of the U.S. intelligence community. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities.
After I fled from California, I began having vivid, detailed memories of being used as a sex slave to some of our nation's highest level government officials. Among them were John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Nelson Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and top entertainment professionals such as my owner, Bob Hope. The truth is that there are slave auctions that very elite people attend to be able to own and buy the best mind control slaves that money can buy. Frank Sinatra was Bob Hope's friend, and he actually was the person that was in charge of me a lot when I was in Las Vegas on assignment. I would be taken there to be prostituted to Elvis or to some of the other entertainers there during the shows. Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr., and all types of different situations. And I would be taken to different parties where they were at, where then I was prostituted, or they would make some pornography or something. The theme of the pornography filmed by Sylvester Stallone was sex with dolphins, and he was filming a lot of these young girls with the dolphins, and that was actually pornography that was shared with a lot of people later on. They filmed us over years with all sorts of animals. I mean, it was gross. There was a film that was made when Kelly was a very little girl. It was called Mommy and Me, and it was, you know, just incestual themes of all sorts of interfamilial sex. And during the time all this was happening, I was under total mind control, and so was Kelly. We didn't even know this was going on. We were just puppeted like robots to do these things. I know that some of my perpetrators were actually known Satanists, and some of them were not. I know that Sammy Davis Jr. actually painted his little fingernail with red nail polish and was actually part of a satanic group.
How does satanic ritual abuse play into all of these prominent people being involved in this stuff?
If you go back 225 or 30 years ago, you have what we call the Illuminati that was established in 1776. And the goals of the Illuminati, this is all very well documented, are to take over the world. One of the best ways of taking over the world is to control people's minds and to take over a country through the control of the minds. So what's happening in America, and based on my research and my interviews with numerous individuals, is that the powers that be, the higher-ups, the people in the Illuminati, are using the satanic cults as a means and as a tool to condition individuals and to make them victims of the mind control, MKultra mind control program. There's probably close to 4 million practicing Satanists in the United States alone, based on my intelligence information.
Why was it that the Queen of England saw you as being the perfect candidate for genetic engineering?
In a series of meetings that took place before Reagan was president, he took me to England, where we had private meetings with the Queen. During those meetings, I overheard them talking about my genetic structure and the bloodline that would house that genetic bloodline. And she was very interested in having Ronald Reagan be the father of that child. They decided that I would be impregnated for later breeding within the royal family. It's an experience that still causes me a lot of pain, and although I was under mind control and wasn't really aware of this for years, consciously, the full ramifications of this, I had thoughts about this baby, and I was depressed, and I was sad, and I wanted him back, and I cried for months afterwards. They kept saying that this would further American diplomatic relations with the UK, and that I was serving my country at the highest levels by making this contribution. But the truth is, it was not my choice, and I didn't make a willing contribution of my own child. And I'm hoping that my child, my son, will know who he is and will wake up.
If the Queen would be watching this show right now, what is a message that you would want to give to her?
I would just like to tell the Queen of England that whether a person's under mind control or not, that no one has a right to take a child from someone, and that if she didn't know I was under mind control, that I would, understand, but that, I would just appeal to her as a mother and ask for her cooperation in this situation, that I could be at least reunited with my son.